landslide victories in New York and New Jersey, an apology by the president, and Twitter goes public. Those are just some of the topics on this week's edition of Fresh Outlook. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Nia Toski. Well, we sat here last week and we all predicted huge wins for New Jersey Governor Christie and New York's first Democratic mayor in 25 years, Bill de Blasio. We'll take a look at what these wins mean for both states. We'll also talk about a bill by House Republicans which will allow people to keep their existing health plans. And we'll take to the social networking world to buy or not to buy. That is the Twitter question. But first, we've been talking about the elections for months, and now the people have spoken. But apart from Christie's big victory in New Jersey, some say there is more to fear than to cheer for both parties in this week's election results. The outcomes, especially the close race in Virginia, is highlighting the issue that both parties are operating with more weaknesses than strengths. Let's take a look at some of the races.
New Jersey's Governor Christie is back for another term and hinted that he's running for the White House in 2016.
Now listen, I know that if we can do this in Trenton, New Jersey, maybe the folks in Washington, D.C. should tune in their TVs right now, see how it's done.
Christie won 60.5% of the vote for governor against the 38% for State Senator Barbara Buono. It was a close race in Virginia with the Democrat beating the Republican for the governor's seat 47-45. Yet he lost the election.
Over the next 4 years, most Democrats and Republicans in Virginia want to make Virginia a model for pragmatic leadership that is friendly to job creation.
And although I lost, tonight you sent a message to the President of the United States that you believe that Virginia understands that Obamacare is a failure and that you want to be in charge of your health care.
In New York City, Bill de Blasio was elected the city's first Democratic mayor since 1993. The former councilman beat Republican Joe LaHoda with a commanding 74-24% lead.
I'm not surprised that he won because, you know, everyone was really pushing, especially in the poorer neighborhoods.
I think he's very diverse, and I think he and his family represent what the components of what New York is made up of.
In his victory speech, de Blasio promised to fight income inequality as a top priority. His term begins with the new year.
And to talk more about what Election Day means for the Democratic and Republican parties, we are joined by former White House aide Didi Benke, Dr. William Rosenberg from Drexel University, and of course, Dr. Bart Rossi, political psychologist. We thank you all for joining us. Well, let's talk about what we've learned this week. We've been talking about this for some time right now, and let's go down to Virginia first. We'll head down there and look at McAuliffe. Democrat Terry McAuliffe's slim victory over his Republican rival. McAuliffe still lost white voters by 56% to 36%. And only won that race by 55,000 votes. So very slim victory there. What does that say? Didi, we're going to start with you.
I really think the big message for this race was, you know, McAuliffe, he had so much money and so much help, and he was way ahead, and then it tightened at the last minute because his opponents started talking about how bad Obamacare is, and he hung it on McAuliffe. So he almost lost because of Obamacare. So I think the big message is that Obamacare is very unpopular and a very powerful tool, which is good news for the Republicans.
Well, we're certainly going to be talking about that more in the segment, especially our second segment when we talk about Obamacare. Dr. Rosenberg, we want to weigh in on just initial thoughts when you looked at the Virginia race.
Well, I think one of the things you have to recognize is that Virginia has a tradition of being a very conservative state. It's a red state. And Obama in 2008 pulled it back to the blue side, and he was able to win it again in 2012. So you're talking about a state that's basically been moving a little bit more Democratic. It's not a clear win ever for Democrats. So the fact that McAuliffe won is a good sign because that means that he's still pulling the Democratic line. He spent probably 8 times more than his opposition, so it's not a tremendous victory, but it's a, you know, in the wins and losses, it's a win.
And Dr. Bart, what does it say? We're moving forward into the 2014 election cycle as well. What do you think the Virginia race is going to say to folks?
Well, a couple things. I think Didi's making a great spin from the Republican side. I think that's a great effort. But guess who won? The Democrat won.
That's true.
And I think it's significant that he won in what was really has been a red state. So I think it's significant.
It goes back and forth.
And
though,
I think,
really
and
does.
I also think that Obamacare wasn't the major factor. In the polling only said it about 30% of the people voting thought it was economy, which was the biggest factor. But I think for 2014, to answer your question, I think it does have a message. And I think the Tea Party is going out of town. I think that the Tea Party time is dwindling, and I think that their influence on the political sphere is really dwindling. I think it's going downhill.
Well, let's talk about New Jersey right now. Of course, we saw Chris Christie with a win there as well, nothing that we didn't predict here. But let's take a look at that. The Tea Party, of course, everybody's right now talking about whether he's going to run for the presidency. And most people do believe that he is going to. So how does he win back the Tea Party? How does he move forward in the next cycle?
Actually, I think he needs to be Christie. His best shot is for him to be himself. Stay within his personality and be a moderate Republican. By the time 2016 comes around, I think the Tea Party is going to be waning even more.
But one of the things they said that Christie did very well was that he appeals to both the minorities and appeals to both the Republicans, the staunch Republicans. Dr. Rosenberg?
One of the things that I think is important to realize is that what we're really facing here is a situation where we had a very low turnout rate in New Jersey. We had about 38%. And the other part was about a $28 million investment that Chris Christie spent of New Jersey taxpayers to make sure that he was going to get sort of a landslide victory by putting Cory Booker on the ballot 3 weeks ahead of time. So when you look at who actually showed up on Election Day versus what the whole electorate is of New Jersey, it's kind of hard to read the tea leaves. But ultimately, Chris Christie won. He won big, and he's going to be a force in the 2016 election. The question is going to be is how is he going to be received by Republicans, particularly by more conservative Republicans who are the ones that really make the decisions. It's not the rank and file of the American public that votes in primaries. It's really the activists and the people that are more to the right and more to the left. And I think he has a potential serious problem in appealing to the right. He's probably going to do better if he was the center right or middle part of the electorate. But that's not how you get to be president. You have to win the Republican nomination or the Democratic nomination.
Didi, you're nodding your head there.
Well, working on the presidential election and on a million other elections and being someone who's to the right, look, I love Chris Christie. I mean, I can deal with the fact that he is not as to the right as I am because he has a great leadership ability. I think he can beat Hillary Clinton, which is the most important part. You know, I want to win the election, and I think he's the guy who can win. And I'm happy to try to help my folks that are to the right, my Tea Party friends, try to convince them that Chris Christie's the one.
But it didn't work out, though, in the election. The election night, Hillary actually beat him in the polling.
Okay.
Well, that's
then,
passed.
and who knows what's going to happen now? Because now he's a force to be reckoned with. He's already a target. Time Magazine's always saying he's the elephant in the room. They're already calling him the fat guy. I mean, they are already targeting him because they're scared to death because he can beat Hillary Clinton.
Well, let's take a look at what Democrats and Republicans can learn from this election and from what's been happening in the past couple of months. Democrats, as we've seen, keep losing the white vote in droves, and the Republicans aren't making inroads with minorities. So moving forward.
Well, there's a couple of things. One of the things that I find really striking is if you go back and you look at history, the last time the white vote in America, white male vote, voted for a president who won in the Democratic Party was Lyndon Johnson. Okay?
It's been a while.
Okay. White Democratic males do not vote for the Democratic president. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I mean, excuse me, I should not say Democratic males. Just white males don't vote for the Democratic candidate. It hasn't happened since 1960s. Okay, so what we have is we're getting to be more of a multicultural society. And one of the things that we really have to recognize is that we have a lot of new voters coming on board, particularly Latinos and Hispanics. And with immigration issues, I think sort of always hovering over us and never really being resolved, that's an issue that the Democrats seem to hold a little bit of advantage. They're trying to pass legislation, but it's not going forward.
So 2014, Republicans have to put that on their to-do list.
They were supposed to put it on for 2012, 2013, and it hasn't happened yet.
Well, I'm kind of thinking how we do that is we put Marco Rubio on the ticket.
You've said that for a while now.
Yes.
Rubio and
I like
Christie.
Rubio. So, and I don't know, I kind of see Christie being the big guy, being the, so to speak. as far as president, but Rubio would be wonderful there. And he's, spent a lot of time on the immigration issue, and I think he's got some good points. And we do, as a party, have work to do in that area. There's no doubt about it.
Well, let's talk about, we were talking about diversity. Let's talk about Bill de Blasio, because I don't think there's a candidate out there that doesn't offer more diversity. Was his background, was that one of the reasons why he won? That's what a few people have, few headlines have been saying that. Dee Dee?
I think so, and he just had the perfect storm. We touched upon that last week about, we had never had a front runner. Quinn was sort of there, and then Weiner was there, and then just all of a sudden, de Blasio comes up, and he just got really lucky, I think. But he did have a good optic, having an African-American wife and his kids, and they were out there, and he was talking about, look, I'm for everybody. I don't think it's good to have this disparity, so that was a good message for him in New York. However, I don't think the policy's going to be good. I really fear this guy being the mayor. So, we'll see what happens, but I think law and order is most important for the mayor of New York.
Dr. Rosenberg, right place, right time, and moving forward, what does he do to engage the NYPD, which is obviously he ran on the stop and frisk.
Right. I think the issue is you're really talking about a left-right dimension, and I think you're the perfect example of this, that he is obviously not on the right. He is a more progressive candidate. He's against stop and frisk. He's against sort of major issues of income equality, but that's not an issue he can really deal with. It's not a New York City issue. He used it as an issue, but it's not really an issue for him. Ultimately, I think what we have to recognize is that he won big, but again, a very low turnout. And I think, I was involved in a book a few years ago called The Politics of Disenchantment. And I think what we're seeing in many of these elections is disenchantment. Low turnout, and we're seeing disenchanted people who are activists, okay, particularly like Tea Party types, being more likely to show up, and the rest of the public sort of in this malaise. They're not really excited about a lot of the candidates, and frankly, I don't think they were excited about Christie. I think the issue is these candidates all won, but I think we have to recognize that in politics, overnight is a lifetime, and where we are with Christie today could be very different in a month.
And it certainly is very interesting when you do talk about the lower, the low voter turnout. That's certainly a very valid point there. Let's talk about folks that might be worried right now. Obviously, de Blasio comes from the Dinkins era, which was not historically very successful in terms of crime and many other things. What does he have to do moving forward to make sure that New Yorkers feel safe?
Well, I think a little differently. I think that de Blasio has a winning personality. I don't think he was lucky. He's progressive, and he actually approached the people of New York, most of them who are progressives. So I think what he really does need to do, to your question, though, is really he has to make sure that the city is safe. He needs to project that out. He needs a new police commissioner, and he needs to do well in that area.
What was the message that he sent, the clear message that he sent to Bloomberg?
I just don't like his message, actually. Other than he was like, let us all come together, that's one, that's nice, kumbaya. But you know what New Yorkers want is they want to be safe. They want law and order, and that's something Giuliani did well. That's something Bloomberg did well.
But he also defined the 1%, and that's something that he
invoked that message, and it worked.
The problem is the assumption that de Blasio doesn't want a safe city, which I think is quite frankly unfair.
Not that he doesn't want it, but what he wants to do as policy, is it going to get us there? I don't think so.
Well, but that's a different issue. Okay, you can debate about the policy, but if you're talking about the intention of the mayor.
I'm not talking about the intention.
Okay, the intention of the mayor is.
I'm talking about the policy.
Well, there's a difference of opinion that people have on whether or not that's a good policy.
All right, we're going to take one last quick question from everybody. We got Christie that's going to be obviously taking over the reins in New Jersey for another 4 years, maybe 4 years. If he starts campaigning, what does this mean for New Jersey? Is this going to be good for New Jersey or bad for New Jersey?
Hey, if I lived in New Jersey and I thought my governor was going to be president, I'd be loving it. And he's got a good chance to be president.
Good for New Jersey or bad?
I'm not sure. I mean, the fact is that he's going to attract more attention to New Jersey. Maybe some businesses are going to look and say this might be a good place to go. But I don't know that being a candidate from a particular state really changes the politics of that state. I don't think Massachusetts changed dramatically because Romney was even on the ticket.
All right. Hang on there, everybody. We're going to come right back, and we will continue to talk about politics when we do return. This week, House Republicans hope President Obama will follow up on this week's apology by supporting a bill they are offering that will let Americans maintain their coverage for another year. We'll be right back.